Oye, mi gente, welcome to the Max Breakdown, where we will be diving into sports news, sports cards, and cultura Dominican style with a twist on it. This will be a bonus podcast because we will be only talking about one thing, and we will be giving homage to the New York Knicks. And here we go. New York. This city doesn't crown nobody by mistake. If you want your name in the garden rafters, you gotta earn it with blood, IQ, toughness, and heart. And the crazy part is that the 2026 Knicks, Brunson, Bridges, Hart, OG, Towns, Alvarado, Landry Shamet, all those wonderful bench players that we call the bench mob. We gotta give them respect. But they are a mirror image of the last Knicks team that actually won it all. To understand this squad, you gotta go back to 1970 and 1973. The blueprint, the DNA, the soul of New York basketball goes back to those teams from that era. And let's take a deeper look to those teams. And it will start in 1970. The team built like the New York concrete. How the 1970 team was really formed with grit. The 1970 Knicks were built with hype. They were built with scouting, patience, and toughness. In 1964, they drafted Willis Reed, which became the foundation. Reed wasn't supposed to be a superstar. He was a second-round pick from Grambling State, but he showed up to New York with a jumper, with a mean streak, leadership aura, a willingness to fight anybody. He became the heartbeat. That's what Willis Reed was when he came to the Knicks in 1964. But then in 1967, they drafted the identity of that team. CLYDE came in quiet. He was smooth and unbothered, a southern guy. He wasn't flashy at first. He grew up into it. But the Knicks saw length, defense, poise, a point guard who could control the entire tempo of the game. CLYDE became the soul of that team. He really, really did. Then in that same year, 1967, they got the brainchild, a Rhodes Scholar, a genius, a guy who studied the game like a mad scientist. He brought structure and spacing before spacing existed. That's exactly what they bought. But then in 1968, they traded for Dave DeBusschere, who was that missing link, that piece that they needed. This was a move that changed everything that DeBusschere was. He was a bruiser, a rebounder, a defensive wall, a leader. When he arrived, the Knicks instantly became a championship level defensive team. That's what he was, for sure. So there were early signs of greatness for this team, and that was an 18-game winning streak. This wasn't luck. This was a domination. They beat teams with smarter play, better defense, better chemistry, more toughness. This was the moment the league said, New York is coming. Talking about their defense, they held teams to 105 points per game in a fast era. They were the best defensive team in basketball. Plus, they had chemistry. Players said, we didn't have to have 5 guys on the court. We had one. That's rare. That's championship DNA. A coaching staff that were architects with the one and only, the Hall of Famer, Red Holzman, the Godfather. Holzman didn't scream. He didn't do theatrics. He taught. His commandments were simple. Hit the open man, help on defense, open without the ball, sacrifice for the team. He created the first modern day basketball system. That's to be honest, that's exactly what he did. He was that guy. He really was. When they traded for DeBusschere, CLYDE said the team instantly felt complete. So check that out. One trade back in the 60s, and a team felt like that was the missing piece. They realized they were the best team in the league. And Willis Reed's tunnel walk, when he limped out of Game 7, the Knicks knew the title was theirs. CLYDE delivered the greatest Game 7 ever. And just like that, the Knicks had won in 1970. When 1973 came around, it was the evolution of a champion. By 1973, the Knicks weren't young anymore. They were battle-tested, they were smarter, they were tougher, and more complete. And then they added a piece that had swagger, that had that moxie, that had that it factor that made everything a lot better. And that was none other than Jerry Lucas. Jerry Lucas was amazing. And so were other great pieces like Earl the Pearl Monroe. Earl the Pearl Monroe was a magician who learned to blend into the system. And they had Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson was another one of those guys that was a bruiser. He knew how to guard, and he gave the Knicks that defensive presence that they needed. So in 1973, they were smarter, more disciplined, and even better defensively. They beat the Lakers in 5 games. They became 2-time champions. They cemented the Knicks' identity forever. Now, this is where all this comes and blends in. The 2026 Knicks are built with the same DNA, because the 2026 Knicks weren't built by accident. They were built by a man with a plan. Leon Rose, the modern day Red Holzman. Leon Rose didn't chase stars. He built a culture, just like Holzman did. He built a roster of high IQ, toughness, defense, chemistry, no egos, all heart. And let's break down the chess moves that he assembled. It all started with that one guy that we know that he is the heartbeat, and that is Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is that heartbeat of the Knicks that we know that when he is on the floor, he is that guy. If you remember correctly, every time we turned on the TV and looked at sports channels, they said he was too small, that he was a backup. that he is not worth the money. And Leon Rose said, watch. Brunson became a superstar, a leader, a playoff killer, a heart of a franchise. He is our modern day Willis Reed. That's what Jalen Brunson is. Our modern day Willis Reed. I really can't say enough of what he means to us. But then we got Josh Hart. Josh Hart brought hustle. He brought defense, rebounding, leadership, and grit. He turned the Knicks into a toughness first team, just like the Busher did in 1968. Then, if you remember, we traded and gave up pieces that weren't popular. We traded Mr. Broadway Barrett for OG Anunoby. That wasn't popular at all. But OG brings elite perimeter defense, length, versatility, and quiet leadership. He turned the Knicks into a switch everything monster, just like that 1973 team. And then we traded a whole bunch of number one picks for Mikal Bridges. We were like, listen, you ain't got to go too far. You're only in Brooklyn. You're just going to cross to MSG. And this was the moment the Knicks became complete, when they traded for Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges brings that calm, that smooth, that two-way, unbothered, perfect system player. He is the modern day Clyde Frazier, the balance of the team. I wasn't too much of a fan of this guy, but when you think of Karl Anthony Towns, you have to think Jerry Lucas, because Town brings that shooting ability, that spacing ability, that size, that of being 7 foot, and an offensive versatility that Jerry Lucas brought in 1973. He added a new dimension to that offense. Back in October 6th, before the season started, I had made a TikTok stating the Knicks need to trade for this guy. They need to trade for this guy, and they did. And Alvarado, we all know, Grand Theft Auto Alvarado brings the defense. He brings the hustle. He brings that chaos and that heart. That Brooklyn-bred player. He is the type of player that Holzman would have loved. He would have loved to have had an Alvarado in his team. When you look at Willis Reed, he reminds us of Jalen Brunson. When we look at Clyde Frazier, he reminds us of Mikal Bridges. When you look at Dave DeBusschere, he reminds us of Josh Hart. When you look at Jerry Lucas, he reminds us of Karl Anthony Towns. When you look at Earl the Pearl, he reminds us of OG Anunoby. When you look at Phil Jackson, not because of the height, but he should remind you of Jose Alvarado because of the heart. And when you look at Red Holzman, he reminds us of Coach Brown. That 1970 and 73 Knicks team reminds us of the 2026 Knicks. They have the same DNA, the same culture, the same identity. That 1970 Knicks team built the blueprint. The 1973 Knicks perfected it. And the 2026 Knicks, they're trying to finish the story. This isn't just a good team. This is a team built from the same DNA as the last Knicks champions. If history really does repeat itself, New York might be on the edge of something legendary. Please subscribe to the Max Breakdown if you are enjoying it. It means a lot to me. And mi gente, that's the breakdown for today. Walk with faith, move with purpose, and don't let anybody shake your spirit. And this is Max, el que te lo dice claro. I'll see you in the next one.